So here's a question a lot of people have been asking since, I guess, MLP FIM started, or at least as it's progressed. But it's not just with MLP FIM, it's with a lot of other shows, past and present, that have gone on for several seasons and are still going on. And that is, why do shows always leave questions unanswered? Yeah, that's a big, big question. Why do shows do this? Well, I think sometimes certain shows do this because they want to leave it opened up. They want to keep it opened up to the imagination. In other words, if they know that said show or franchise has a following, and they want to keep any questions or any plot holes sometimes open to the imagination. They do. Let's take for example the Mighty Ducks. Now, that show ended with them stopping Dragonis from taking over the world. Basically, Dragonis had succeeded in getting what he needed to repower the Raptors, stuff like that. He opened up another gateway to start an invasion, and basically the Ducks had to stop him at the risk, basically, of sacrificing any chance they would have to get back home, which they did. So, that's a bit of a spoiler if you've not seen the last episode. But still, it left the door opened up for wondering what was going to come next. Because the last thing we see is the Ducks winning a semifinal NHL game and going on to the Stanley Cup. Now, like I said, with the show ending like that, it does kind of give you a bittersweet ending because, yes, they did defeat Dragonis. They did kind of stop him from succeeding, but at the price of remaining on Earth. So it opened up a lot of questions for fans wondering, would have Dragonis found a way back? Who would have been the new villains coming in? Would the Ducks find another way to get back to Puck World? And by doing this, it allowed fans to interpretate through fan fiction, webcomics, etc., their own version of what could have been had the show continued on. Same goes for Sonic Sat AM. Even though a lot of us pretty much have had confirmation that a third season was in the works but never happened, you have a lot of people interpreting what would have been by using some of the ideas that the late Ben Hurst had hinted at that would have been used in season 3. I mean, heck, you have a group of people like Laura Blue and several others that have basically worked on and still currently work on occasions a webcomic and a possible animated adaptation of said webcomic that's based off what would have been season 3, or at least some of the ideas that would have been part of season 3. And it's actually a pretty good webcomic because it dives in, because not only do they take the ideas of some of the ideas that Ben Hurst hinted at that would have taken place, but they actually add on more of what could be expanded on. Like, okay, you could find out more about certain characters, like Sally's mom in this interpretation of in the Sat AM version, or in the Sat AM verse. You could have found out, basically they add on to what Ben wanted to do. Basically, they're interpreting what could have been, because the ending of season 2 ended on a cliffhanger, and we never got any resolution. So so basically by leaving that open, it constantly has and still does open the doors to a fan's imagination to interpretate from their perspective and from what Ben Hurst has hinted at of what could have been. Even shows that go the full 65 required, well, at the time I guess still is at times, required 65 episode run length, those shows that go the required 65 episode run length, or nowadays 26 episode run length, even if they end after that, if let's say there's more questions than answers left after the final episodes are done, After the last couple of episodes are done, the series is completed. And like I said, there's a lot more questions left than answers. Then it opens the door for fans to interpret what could be. A lot of fans wanted a complete fulfillment of a complete fullness of Kim Possible, and they got that. They got that with Kim Possible. But even though they got 4 seasons, 2 movies, and a 2-part finale, it still opens the door to interpretation of what could have taken place afterwards. A lot of shows, even live action shows, can do this. But I guess that's something that always bothers a lot of people. It's like, why do writers do this? Why do they make this happen? Why do they cause this? And again, I think the answer is real simple. If they've run out of ideas, and writers do run out of ideas, they pretty much figure, okay, we've done what we can with this series. We've done what we can with this medium, this adaptation of the franchise or whatever. We've done all we can. We've written just about any kind of story we could think of without repeating ourselves. So what do? Well, what they do is they end it, hopefully in a satisfactory kind of way. But in a sense, by ending it in a satisfactory kind of way, they also realize that they're probably going to have some answers left, or probably have some questions left unanswered. Thus, they feel, hey, we'll leave it to the fans, to the viewers that made this show great and helped it run for as long as it did. We'll leave it up to their imaginations to figure out what happens next. And that's why you have a lot of these fan fiction stories. That's why you have all these multi-chapter fan fiction stories or multi-chapter web comics or even multi-chapter web flash web animations, flash animations, or even CGI animations that are made, or even in the case of dual cartoonists, almost Disney Renaissance Don Bluth-like animation made, because they're trying to, in their best way, interpret what would have been or could have been had the show continued in some form or manner. That's why, from my perspective, from my opinion, why writers do this. Why shows and overall the writers of the shows do this. Why they leave questions unanswered, because they're leaving it up to our imagination, to our interpretation of what could have been, and what could have been and what could have taken place. That's why they do it. They don't do it purposely because they run out of ideas. They do it in a way so not only do you get a satisfactory finale, even though, like I said, you'll still probably have some questions unresolved and unanswered, they do it in a way that opens that door up to your imagination, to our imagination, to let us as fans interpret what could have been and what would have been. That's why basically writers do this. We may not like it. There's a lot of people that may not like it. I don't particularly like it, I'll be honest, but in a way, it does open the floodgates, because what it does is it inspires future, if not current writers to create their own stuff or their own interpretations. I mean, you can't tell me that there's not one writer right now in Hollywood or in the comic book industry that didn't start out writing their own interpretation of what could have been for Mighty Ducks, for Disney's Mighty Ducks, or what could have been for Rescue Rangers, or what could have been for Sonic Sat AM, or Tailspin, or Gargoyles, or even, Spider-Man, the 1990 series. You can't tell me they didn't start out by doing that, and now look where they are. So, to me, in all honesty, that's basically why shows, mostly the writers of the shows, leave questions unanswered because they're leaving it up to our imagination. Even with series still going on, like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the questions are like about Applejack's parents, Rainbow Dash's relationship with Scootaloo, stuff like that. It's, Sunset's background, the origins of Celestia and Luna. Despite giving us some answers in some form of media or another, they still have a lot of questions that are left unanswered and left to the imagination of the fans to interpret. So that's why, in my opinion, writers of shows do this. So that's all I'm going to say on my take of it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like, and I am out.